to happen?
As usual, Senator Warren is 100% right in diagnosing the problem. There are absolutely excesses in technology, and in some cases, having them invest parts of the business is the right move. But we also have to be realistic that competition doesn't solve all the problems. It's not like any of us wants to use the fourth best navigation app. That would be like cruel punishment. There's a reason why no one is using Bing today. Sorry, Microsoft, it's true. So it's not like breaking up these big tech companies will revive Main Street businesses around the country. And as the parent of 2 young children, I'm particularly concerned about screen use and its effect on our children. Studies clearly show that we're seeing record levels of anxiety and depression coincident with smartphone adoption and social media use. Breaking up the tech companies does nothing to make our kids healthier. What we have to do is we have to home in on the specific problems we're trying to solve and use 21st century solutions for 21st century problems. Using a 20th century antitrust framework will not work. We need new solutions and a new toolkit.
Thank you. Senator Warren, is Mr. Yang wrong? Your response.
I'm not willing to give up and let a handful of monopolists dominate our economy and our democracy. It's time to fight back. Think about it this way. When you talk about how it works in competition, about 8%, 9% of all retail sales happen in bricks and sticks stores, happen at Walmart. About 49% of all sales online happen in one place, that's Amazon. It collects information from every little business. And then Amazon does something else. It runs the platform, gets all the information, and then goes into competition with those little businesses. Look, you get to be the umpire in the baseball game, or you get to have a team, but you don't get to do both at the same time.
Yep.
We need to enforce our antitrust laws, break up these giant companies that are dominating.
We've come this far, we have to rebuild.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
The Constitution is not set in stone, and it's not supposed to be. They said on it, literally,
Warren, that in fact monopolies have
they
to
will
be dealt
trust
with.
the future
They either have to be broken up or regulated, and that's part of it. But we have to understand that Mr. Trump is going to be running on the economy. He's going to be saying he's the person who can make it grow. I started a business from scratch, no employers, and built a multi-billion-dollar international business.
The whole idea of it is
We're going to have to show
exponential
the
growth,
American people that we
constantly
don't just know
growing,
how to tax and have
betting on
programs to break up
itself.
companies, but also talk about prosperity. Talk
Stock
about
market,
investing in the American
that's
people.
great for
Talk about
gambling
harnessing the innovation and competition of the American private sector. In fact, if we want to beat Mr. Trump, I think somebody who can go toe-to-toe with him and show him to be a fraud and a failure as a business person and a fraud and a failure as a steward of the American economy is going to be necessary. He is one. His tax plan's a failure.
Part of what it supports is
I would love to take him on
keeping
as a
the
real
lower
businessman
class down, and keeping the working class working,
and show that in fact he's failed the American people and he has to go.
Thank you, Mr. Sire. Senator Booker, how do
lower classes,
you respond? Would a President Booker break up big tech companies like Facebook and Amazon?
Anybody that does not think that we have a massive crisis in our democracy with the way these tech companies are being used, not just in terms of anti-competitive practices, but also to undermine our democracy. We have seen it in the 2016 election, practices being used that have not been corrected now. We need regulation and reform. And antitrust, I mean, Robert Bork right now is laughing in his sleep. We have a reality in this country where antitrust from pharma to farms is causing trouble. And we have to deal with this. As President of the United States, I will put people in place that enforce antitrust laws. And I want to say one last thing, and I feel qualified to say this as the vegan on the stage.
Are you positive about
going
that?
back to the fact that it's rich to me that we asked 3 people about their health. When looking at this stage, we know that the most unhealthy person running for the presidency in 2020 is Donald Trump.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman O'Rourke, you say you're not sure if it's appropriate for a president to designate which companies should be broken up. So what's the proper level of oversight here?
We need to set very tough, very clear, transparent rules of the road. The kind of rules that we do not we have today that allow these social media platforms where we, the people, have become the product, to abuse that public trust and to do so at extraordinary profits. Right now, we treat them functionally
style of
as a utility,
person
when in reality,
person is like,
Democratic primary voters say they think a candidate under the age of 70 is more likely to defeat President Trump. What do you say to that?
Well, I say I will outwork, out-organize, and outlast anyone, and that includes Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or whoever the Republicans get stuck with. Look, the
Republicans, generically opposing party. They serve no purpose other than to justify their own existence. Getting in office,
campaigns are
getting
financed.
money
I announced
responsibility.
elect them, and then do nothing, break apart government,
behind
and
closed
say
doors
that government
and
is wasting
take
money.
the
They're the ones that are wasting the money.
money of these
They're
executives
creating the
and then
division.
turn
They
around
are
and
the problem.
expect that these are the people who are actually finally
GOP
going
are
to
the
enforce
problem
the
that they are
laws.
trying to
We
fight.
need campaign finance,
Thomas
rules,
Jefferson
and
Senator Warren,
practices
Senator Harris.
basically
that support
created
us
them,
all.
and
It
it was his
does
worst,
not represent a system of justice
admitted
to say
worst,
that the rules will apply differently to
worst invention.
different people. This is a matter, you are saying, of holding big tech accountable. Holding big tech accountable because they have an outsized influence on people's perceptions about issues, and they actually influence behaviors. We all have to agree this is their power. It is immense.
Senator Klobuchar, let me bring you in here. Your response.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished. And so what I am saying is that it seems to me that you would be able to join me in saying the rule has to apply to Twitter the same way it does to Facebook.
Look, I think all of the rules should apply across the board. I don't have a problem with that.
So you will
What
join
I
me in
do
saying
have
Twitter
a
should shut down that
problem with
account.
is that if we're going to talk seriously about breaking up big tech, then we should ask if people are taking money from the big tech executives. If we're going to talk seriously about breaking up big drug companies, we should ask if people are financing their campaigns by taking money from big drug executives. If we are going to talk about Wall Street and having some serious regulation over Wall Street, we should ask if people are funding their campaigns by taking money from those executives.
Thank you,
So long
Senator
as that's
Klobuchar.
what
Let's bring you in
I would
here.
like to have a different take on this. I was in the private sector for 14 years, represented companies that were fighting to get into the telecom market. So I had a life before government. And what I saw was when we got more competition there, the prices went down in a big way in the long distance market. Well, right now we have another Gilded Age going on, and I am the lead Democrat on the Antitrust Committee. I have the lead legislation, which means one, changing the standard so we can do a better job of doing just what we've been talking about here, is breaking down some of this consolidation and also making sure that the enforcers have the resources to take them on because they're so overwhelmed. But the issue here is this. Start talking about this as a pro-competition issue. This used to be a Republican and Democratic issue because America, our founding fathers, actually wanted to have less consolidation. We were a place of entrepreneurship. We are seeing a startup
Thank you,
slump in
Senator.
this country,
Secretary
and this
Castro,
means
would you like
everything
to weigh
from
in?
tech
Please
on
respond.
down.
Yeah, I think that we're on the right track in terms of updating how we look at monopolistic practices and setting, as Congressman O'Rourke said, rules for the road that match the challenges that we face today. And, you know, whether that's Amazon that is leveraging its size, I think, to help put small businesses out of business, and then at the same time, shortchanging a lot of its workers, not paying them as they should, not giving them the benefits they should, or it's a number of other companies, big tech companies, we need to take a stronger stance when it comes to cracking down on monopolistic trade practices, and that's what I would do as president.
Thank you,
Best
Mr.
way we
Secretary.
can fight back. The best way we can fight back against big tech companies is to say our data is our property. Right now, our data is worth more than oil. How many of you remember getting a data check in the mail? It got lost. It went to Facebook, Amazon, Google. If we say this is our property and we share in the gains, that's the best way we can balance the scales against big tech companies.
There's a bigger issue here.
Turning to women's reproductive
not
rights.
want to become
Ohio
China.
is now
We
one
want
of
to be the
several states
anti.
that has banned
We don't
abortions
want our
after as
privacy,
early as 6 weeks of
our
pregnancy.
tracking,
Many
everything,
women don't even know they are
to
pregnant
be
at that time.
profiting
The Ohio
some
law, like
gambling
many others,
system,
is being
just like
challenged
the
in the
stock
courts and has
market,
not yet taken effect.
where they just gamble
Senator
on our
Harris,
popularity,
states
our
prevail
social
on restricting abortion. What's your plan to stop them?
My plan is
positivity
as
versus
follows.
negativity. Credit, like
For any state that
don't
passes
need
a
that
law
social
that
score
violates the
system.
Constitution and in particular Roe v. Wade, our Department of Justice will review that law to determine if it is compliant with Roe v. Wade and the Constitution, and if it is not, that law will not go into effect. That's called preclearance. Because the reality is that while we still have, as I said earlier, these state legislators who are outdated and out of touch, mostly men who are telling women what to do with their bodies, then there needs to be accountability and consequence. But, I'll go further. You may have seen it. I questioned Brett Kavanaugh when I was a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and asked him as a nominee to serve on the United States Supreme Court, could he think of any law that tells a man what to do with his body? And the answer was no. The reality of it is, this is still a fundamental issue of justice for women in America. Women have been given the responsibility to perpetuate the human species. Our bodies were created to do that. And it does not give any other person the right to tell a woman what to do with that body. It is her body, it is her right, it is her decision.
Senator Harris, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator
Thank you, Mom.
Klobuchar, what would you do to stop states from prevailing? Your response.
I would codify Roe v. Wade and make it the law of the land. But what I want to do right
Go
now
above
is just
and
say,
beyond.
what if Donald Trump
Above
was
that.
standing up here on the debate stage with me?
More than that.
You know what I would say to him? I said, you said you wanted to do this in your race for president. You actually said that you wanted to put women in jail. Then you tried to dial it back, and you said you wanted to put doctors in jail.
What is she doing in there?
That is exactly what the Alabama law is. It put doctors in jail for 99 years. You, Donald Trump, are not on the side of women. You are not on the side of people of this country when over 75% of people want to keep Roe v. Wade on the book.
Yeah.
When over 90% of people want to make sure we have available contraception. You
Rule the world. You are pathetic, Trump. You are nothing.
defunded Planned Parenthood. I would fund it again.
Senator, thank you. Senator Booker, if states prevail on restricting abortion, how would you stop them? Please respond.
Well, first of all, let's be clear about this law. These laws we see from Alabama to Ohio, they're not just attacks on one of the most sacrosanct ideals in our country, liberty, the ability to control your own body, but they're particularly another example of people trying to punish, trying to penalize, trying to criminalize poverty. Because this is disproportionately affecting low-income women in this country, people in rural areas in this country. It is an assault on the most fundamental ideal that human beings should control their own body. And so the way, as President of the United States, I'm going to deal with this is, first of all, elevating it like we have with other national crises to a White House level position. And I will create the Office of Reproductive Freedom and Reproductive Rights in the White House, and make sure that we begin to fight back on a systematic attempt that's gone on for decades undermine Roe v. Wade. I will fight to codify it, and I will also make sure that we fight as this country to repeal the Hyde Amendment so that we are leading the planet Earth in defending the global assault we see on women right now.
Congresswoman Gabbard, your response.
This is often one of the most difficult decisions that a woman will ever have to make, and it's unfortunate to see how in this country it has for so long been used as a divisive political weapon. I agree with Hillary Clinton on one thing, disagree with her on many others, but when she said abortion should be safe, legal, and rare.
Many things, really? Maybe a few things. You're just trying to distance yourself from her. A little mean. Little mean.
I think she's correct. We see how the consequences of laws that you're referring to can often lead to a dangerous place, as we've seen.
Just say it.
Them as they're passed in other countries, where a woman who has a miscarriage past that 6.
Internet of the modem, and let's see, look at my antenna on
Weeks could be imprisoned because abortion would be illegal at that point. I do, however, think that there should be some restrictions in place. I support codifying Roe v. Wade. While making sure that during the 3rd trimester, abortion is not an option unless the life or severe
this is terrible.
health consequences of a woman are at risk.
Thank you very much. The Supreme Court is currently made up of
majority of
5 Republican-appointed
jerks.
justices and 4 appointed by Democrats. The court just announced it will hear arguments in a case challenging some abortion rights. Vice President Biden, the Constitution does not specify the number of justices that serve on the Supreme Court. If Roe v. Wade is overturned on your watch and you can't pass legislation in Congress, would you seek to add justices to the Supreme Court to protect women's reproductive rights?
I would not get in a court, Becky. We had 3 justices. Next time around, when we lose control, they had 3 justices. We began to lose any credibility the court has at all.
I don't
I
know.
want to point out
It's not that bad.
the justices
to add a
I've
few.
supported, when I defeated Robert Bork, and I say when I defeated Robert Bork, I made sure we guaranteed women's right to choose for a better part of a generation. I would make sure that we move and
It's not that bad an idea to add a few more.
insist that we codified Roe v. Wade. The public is already there.
What we really need
Things
to be able
have
to do is
changed.
impeach them.
And I would go out and I would campaign against those people in the state
We know
of Ohio, Alabama, etc., who in fact are throwing up this barrier. Reproductive rights are a constitutional right, and in fact, every woman should have that right. And so I would not pack the court. What I would do is make sure that the people that I recommended for the court, from Ruth Bader
laws or not, we need to not have people who've been appointed by the illegitimate president.
Ginsburg, to Elena Kagan, who used to work for me, to others,
Or
that they in
McConnell's
fact support the right
blocking
of
of
privacy,
people.
on which the entire notion of a woman's right to choose is based. And that's what I would do.
This would be the exact opposite. Our courts need, justices need to be repopulated.
If in fact at the end of this, beginning next year, if in fact one of the justices steps down, God forbid,
lower or
in fact,
fire
I
the
would make sure
ones that were appointed
do exactly what,
under Trump's
what
federal
McConnell did last time out. We would not
corruption.
allow any hearing to be
Thank
held
you, Mr.
for a
Vice
new
President.
justice.
Mayor Buttigieg, you have discussed expanding the court from 9 to
return
15
to a
justices.
true
What's your response to
plurality
That's
system
right.
where
When
the
I proposed reforming the
justices are on the side
Supreme
of
Court, some
the
folks said
plurality
that
of
was
the
too
people.
bold to even contemplate.
Liberal,
now, I'm not
progressive.
talking about packing the court
It is unfair to
just
the
with
country,
people who
unfair
agree
to the
with me.
world.
Although I certainly will appoint people who share my values. For example, the idea that women's reproductive freedom is an American right. What I'm talking about is reforms that will depoliticize the court. We can't go on like this, where every single time there is a vacancy, we have this apocalyptic ideological firefight over what to do next. Now, one way to fix this would be to have a 15-member court where 5 of the members can only be appointed by unanimous agreement of the other 10. Smarter legal minds than mine are discussing this in the Yale Law Journal and how
My Wi-Fi connection is good.
this could be
My
done
cable
without a
connection
constitutional amendment. But the point is that not everybody arrives on a
but
partisan
okay.
basis.
This seems to be CNN.
There are other reforms that we could consider, from term limits. Don't forget, justices used to just retire like everybody else, to a rotation off the appellate bench. I'm not wedded to a particular solution, but I am committed to establishing a commission on day one that will propose reforms to depoliticize the Supreme Court, because we can't.
Thank you very much, Mayor Buttigieg. Secretary Castro, he's talking about making the court bigger. Your response, is it a good idea?
Buttigieg would be the great, Attorney General or Secretary of State. No, I don't mean Attorney General.
I don't think it is. I wouldn't pack the court. I think the plan that Mayor...
Although I think there should be some shared duties. But
Pete
we have
mentioned
a
is an interesting
great
one, but I actually believe if we were selecting from one of those things, that the
buffet
smarter move
of
might be...
candidates, and they should become our executive branch. We don't need one president.
to look at term limits, or having people cycle off.
We need all
from
of
the
them
appellate
and all of
courts,
their teams
so that you would have
to come together.
a replenishment of perspective. I would also make sure that
It's a time to rebuild the country, because
I
there's been
appoint as
such
president people
destruction,
who respect the precedent of Roe versus Wade, that we codify Roe.
We need to rebuild, and we're going to need a lot
versus
more
Wade,
than a regular
and that
presidency.
we do away with things like the Hyde Amendment, because you shouldn't only be able to have
More. Yang
reproductive freedom
is
if you have money.
probably
We have
the
to
best.
think about people who do not, people who are poor. And we have to concern ourselves not only with reproductive freedom,
But he's
but
gonna
also
need
reproductive
a lot of
justice,
help.
and invest in the ability of every woman
Not
to be
fair,
able
my
to make a choice and to be able to have her health care needs met.
Senator Warren, would you consider adding more justices to the Supreme Court to protect Roe v. Wade? Your response?
I think there are a number of
I am basically the same.
travel. They could go to places where it was
Much more experienced than Yang, but in different fields, many fields. I'm basically the real MacGyver.
What we're talking about now is that the people who are denied access to abortion we should not leave this to the Supreme Court. We should do it through democracy because we can.
Thank you very much, Senator.
As some of you have indicated, the differences between all of you on this stage are tiny compared to the differences between you and President Trump.
But
there are, however, fundamental differences between many of you on this stage. Vice President Biden, just on either side of you, Senator Warren is calling for big structural change. Senator Sanders is calling for a political revolution. Will their visions attract the kind of voters that the Democrats need to beat Donald Trump?
The kind.
Almost a $90 billion act that kept us from going into a depression, putting us in a position where I was able to end able to end the issue of gun sales in terms of assault weapons. And so the question is, who is best prepared? We all have good ideas. The question is, who's going to be able to get it done? How can you get it done? And I'm not suggesting they can't, but I'm suggesting that that's what we should look at. And part of that requires you not being vague. Tell people what it's going to cost, how you're going to do it, and why you're going to do it.
Got numbers.
That's the way
problem
to get
is
it done.
it doesn't really
President's
matter.
supposed to be able to persuade.
Just to clarify, Vice President, who are you
Numbers
saying is
do
being
not
vague?
matter.
Well, the senator said she's being vague on the issue of, actually both of them being vague on the issue of the Medicare for all. No, look, here's the deal.
Because we don't know.
It costs $30 trillion.
He's so focused on numbers.
Guess what? That's over $3 trillion.
But we don't know.
It's more than the entire federal budget.
all gonna
You'll both get it.
be
If you
flexible.
eliminate the entire Pentagon,
Numbers don't mean a
every
thing.
single thing, plane, ship, troop, the buildings, everything, satellites, it would pay for a total of 4 months.
This is your
4
old
months.
school
Where do you get the rest?
mentality.
Where's
This
it
is where you just drop it, Biden. This is where we know that you're not fit for it.
Senator Sanders, respond.
In 2 ways. Joe, you talked about working with Republicans and getting things done. But you know what you also got done, and I say this as a good friend. You got the disastrous war in Iraq done. You got a bankruptcy bill which is hurting middle-class families all over this country. You got trade agreements like NAFTA and PNCR with China done, which of course us 4 million jobs. And let's get to Medicare for all. Let's be honest. We spend twice as much per person as do the people of any other major country on earth. And the answer is, if we have the guts, and I would like to see the Democratic Party have that guts, to stand up to the drug companies and the insurance companies and tell them that the function of healthcare is to guarantee care to all people, not to make $100 billion in profit. If we stood together, we could create the greatest healthcare
Vice
system
President Biden, you
in
can
the world.
respond, and then Senator
Sanders
Warren.
will do it.
We can do that without Medicare for all. We can do that by adding a public option. We can. And we can afford to do it.
You got to take on the greed.
Don't
and
need the numbers. We have to take on the greed.
Healthcare industry.
We have to
Vice President.
stop
Greed
the
and
profiteering.
of those insurance companies. They are as much against my bill as they are anybody else. They were strongly against Obamacare. They know it costs them, and it's going to take away the right of people to choose, the 160 million people out there who've negotiated their health insurance, and they want to keep it.
Senator-
They should have a right to keep it.
Senator Warren, your response.
So you started this question with how you got something done. You know, following the financial crash of 2008, I had an idea for a consumer agency that would keep giant banks from cheating people. And all of the Washington insiders and strategic geniuses said, don't even try, because you will never get it passed. And sure enough, the big banks fought us, the Republicans fought us, some of the Democrats fought us. But we got that agency passed into law. It has now forced big banks to return more than $12 billion directly to people they cheated.
And it's being
I
destroyed.
served in the Obama administration. I know what we can do by executive authority, and I will use it. In Congress, on the first day, I will pass my anti-corruption bill, which will beat back the
Thank you, Senator.
influence
Yes,
of
she
money
will.
and repeal the filibuster. And the third, we want to get something done in America. We have to get out there
Thank
and
you, Senator.
fight for the things that touch
Mayor,
people's
Mayor,
lives.
I agreed
Mayor-
with, let me, she should reference me.
Okay.
I agreed with the great job she did. And I went on the floor and got you votes. I got votes for that bill. I convinced people to vote for it. So let's get those things straight too.
Senator Warren, do you want to
Credit,
respond?
yeah. That's great. You did your job.
I am deeply grateful to President Obama, who fought so hard to make sure that agency was passed into law. And I am deeply grateful to every single person who fought for it and who helped pass it into law. But understand...
You did a hell of a job of your job.
Thank you. But understand this. It was a dream big, fight hard. People told me, go for something little. Go for something small. Go for something that the big corporations will be able to accept. I said, no, let's go for an agency that will make structural change in our economy. And
Senator,
President Obama said, I will fight for that.
You know,
and he
I'm available.
had to fight against people in his
I could
own
be the president.
administration. We have to be willing to make
Mayor Buttigieg.
good, big structural change.
Mayor Buttigieg, which is the right vision for a Democrat to beat Donald Trump? That's the essential question.
I'd a buck for every argument that I've witnessed like this. I could pay for college for everybody. We need to move past what has been consuming this whole political space for as long as I've been alive. We're being offered a false choice. I don't agree with the Vice President that Trump is an aberration. I don't agree that there's any such thing as back to normal. Because here in the industrial Midwest, definitely where I live, normal didn't work. That's part of how we got here. That's part of how a guy like Donald Trump managed to get within cheating distance of the Oval Office in the first place. But I also don't agree with Senator Warren that the only way forward is infinite partisan combat. Yes, we have to fight. Absolutely, we have to fight for the big changes at hand. But it's going to take more than fighting. Once again, I want to take you back to that day after Trump has stopped being president. Think about what the president can do to unify a new American majority for some of the boldest things we've attempted in my lifetime. Medicare for all who want it. Actually getting something done on immigration for the first time since the 80s. An assault weapons ban, which would be a huge deal. Making college free for low and middle income students. Yet there's some here on this stage who say it doesn't count unless we go even further. Free college for low and middle income students isn't good enough unless we're also paying for the children of billionaires. Immigration reform isn't enough unless we also decriminalize border crossings. We have an opportunity to do the biggest things we've done in my lifetime.
I did not say back to normal.
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Klobuchar. Senator Klobuchar.
You know, this isn't a flyover part of the country to me. The heartland is where I live. And I want to win those states that we lost last time. And I have bold ideas to get us there. And I think just because they're different than Elizabeth doesn't mean they're bold. But we can't get any of this done on climate change or immigration reform unless they win. And what I have done is win. And the only one up here, time and time again, the reddest of red districts. Michelle Bachmann. I won that district 3 times. Rural districts that border Iowa and North and South Dakota. And I do it by going not just where it's comfortable, but where it's uncomfortable. And that is why I have been in Pennsylvania and in Michigan and in Wisconsin and all over Ohio and in Iowa. Because I think we need to build a blue democratic wall around those states and make Donald Trump pay for it.
Senator Warren, she referenced you, so you can respond.
Now, people who are struggling to pay health care are fighting today. People who are getting crushed by student loans are in a fight today. People who are getting stopped by the police or paid less because of the color of their skin are in a fight today. And anyone who doesn't understand that Americans are already in these fights is not someone who's likely to win them. For me, this is about knowing what's broken, knowing how to fix it, and yes, I'm willing to get out there and fight for it.
Senator Sanders, why is your approach more likely to beat President Trump?
I'll tell you why.
Please
and here's the radical reason why. It's what the American people want.
Yes.
All right? The American people do not want tax breaks for billionaires. They want the rich to start paying their fair share of taxes. Poll came out yesterday. 71% of Democrats support Medicare for all. The people of this country understand that we've got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And more Americans, including Republicans, understand we need bold action if we're going to save this planet for our children and our grandchildren. The way you win an election in this time in history is not the same old, same old. You have to inspire people. You have to excite people. You got to bring working people and young people and poor people into the political process because they know you stand for them, not corporate America.
Congressman O'Rourke, is political revolution what the American people want? Your response.
There was some talk about getting big things done. Psychologists and therapists to take care of those women and men who put their lives on the line for this country. And we were able to do that. And we took what we learned and we applied it to a national law as a member of the minority, working with Republicans and Democrats alike to expand mental health care access for veterans nationally. And then in Texas, one of what was thought to be the reddest states in the country, going to every single county, talking about this progressive agenda and winning more votes than any Democrat has ever won. That's the way that we defeat Donald Trump in November of 2020.
Thank you. We have to take a quick break. The CNN New York Times debate live from Ohio will continue right after this.
I don't know. I still think you should all just vote for me. I've got it all. Well, not all. I don't have much hair on the top of my head. I have really white, light skin, but I have been taken advantage of, beaten down by cops throughout my life, used and abused by everybody. I've been a scapegoat. People have tried to kill me. People have tried to take all of my rights away repeatedly. And I'm still here, and I'm still struggling, still fighting to do what's right for everybody and the planet and the world and all the little creatures. And I literally would not harm a fly if it's not necessary. Sanders is our best bet for consistency. We know what to expect. Warren has lots of plans. Warren and Sanders together. Undefeatable. I really don't like the idea of one president. Yang is the best, most like me as a problem solver, or to find the problems, the cause of the problem, and fix them. Gabbard, she would probably be great along with O'Rourke as working on defense and immigration, probably along with Booker. Booker would be great with United Nations efforts and relief efforts around the world and in our country, dealing with our education system and maybe the food, getting food to the public cafeterias. Klobuchar, probably similar. Booker, yeah. And you billionaire advertiser, you could work in tech. we need to make tech more regulated. Ajit Pai he's scumbag, just selling out the internet. And technology ecosystem, we need to rebuild everything. Not totally, we don't need to take everything apart. We have some great systems. We just need to use what we have much, much better. And I'm a master, a total master of how to bond everything on Earth. Every material, or from music to metals to fabrics to skin. I know how to bond things, one thing to another. Always, it's all about bonding things to another. And that... Oop. Action? What is this? We got 10 minutes left.
We are back with the CNN New York Times Democratic presidential debate. We have time for one more question that we would like all of you to weigh in on. Last week, Ellen DeGeneres was criticized after she and former President George W. Bush were seen laughing together at a football game. Ellen defended their friendship, saying, "We're all different, and I think that we've forgotten that that's okay, that we're all different." So, in that spirit, we'd like you to tell us about a friendship that you've had that would surprise us, what impacts it's had on you and your beliefs. Secretary Castro, let's begin with you.
Well, first of all, thank you to Mark, thank you Anderson, and thank you Aaron and CNN and New York Times and everybody who's here tonight. Some of the most interesting friendships that I've had have been with people different from me, either people older than me that had a lot to teach me, or people who grew up very different from me. Also, teachers as I was growing up, people that had a life experience that when I was growing up was beyond mine. And sometimes also, and this goes to the heart of your question, I think, people who thought differently from me. Folks that I considered and have considered friends. And I think that there's a value to that. I think that that should be reflected more in our public life. I also believe, to just speak about the incident last week with Ellen and George W. Bush, I completely understood what she was saying about being kind to others. I believe that we should be more kind to other folks. I also believe that we should hold people to account for what they've done, especially public servants who have a record of having done something or not done something. And I think that we can do both of those things. I think that we can be kind to people and also hold them accountable for their actions. And there are people, whether it's our former President George W. Bush or others, that should be held accountable. Just as we should be kind, we shouldn't be made to feel shameful about holding people accountable for what they've done.
Congresswoman Gabbard.
Thank you. You know where I come from in Hawaii, many of you know we greet each other with aloha. It's not a word that means hello and goodbye. It actually means something much more powerful than that. It means I come to you with respect and a recognition that we are all connected. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all God's children. So I've developed friendships that some people may be surprised about within the Washington circles, especially with Republicans like Trey Gowdy, for example. He and I disagree a lot and very strongly on a lot of political issues. We've developed a friendship that's based on respect, and he's been there for me during some personally challenging times. The challenge before us today is that our country is very divided. Donald Trump must be defeated. But we must do more than just defeat Donald Trump. We need to deliver a win for the American people. We must stand united as Americans, remembering that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all connected. This is the kind of leadership that I seek to bring as president, inspired by the example of presidents like Abraham Lincoln, who talked about how we should have malice for none and charity for all. When I look out at our country, I don't see deplorables. I see fellow Americans, people who I treat with respect, even when we disagree and when we disagree strongly. I will work to restore a White House that represents light and compassion and respect for every American, regardless of race, religion, orientation, gender, or political affiliation. So I want to ask everyone to join me. Join me in bringing about this government of, by, and for the people that serves all the people of this country And visit my website, tulsi2020.com, for more information.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Klobuchar?
For me, it's John McCain, and I miss him every day. I traveled all over the world with him, and he would sometimes, when we were seated with world leaders, and they would look away from me, he'd say, Senator Klobuchar is the lead Democrat on this trip, and she will go next. And I still remember being there at his ranch. John and I went to visit him and Cindy when he was dying, and he pointed to some words in his book because he could hardly talk. And the word said this: there is nothing more liberating in life than fighting for a cause larger than yourself. That's what we're doing right now. And while we have had major debates about policy, we have to remember that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us. And we have to remember that our job is to not just change policy, but to change the tone in our politics, to look up from our phones, to look at each other, to start talking to each other, because the way we win, and not just win the presidency, but take back the U.S. Senate, is by winning big. And the way we win big is with that fired up Democratic base that's out there today, but it is also about bringing in independents and moderate Republicans. I can lead this, and I ask you to join me because I've done it before, and I will do it again. AmyKlobuchar.com. Join our team.
Senator, thank you very much. Mr. Steyer, tell us about your most surprising friendship.
So I'm friends with a woman from Denmark, South Carolina, named
Pinky.
Deanna Berry, who's fighting for clean water and environmental justice in her community. She's a different gender, she's a different race, she's from a different part of the country.
What?
But she reminds me of my parents in terms of her courage and her optimism and her honor. My mother was a school teacher in the New York...
Different gender. Oh my. Different race. Oh my. So shocking. Who's coming
every
for
single
dinner?
day after. And that's why I started the need to impeach movement 2 years ago, because there was something terribly wrong at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, you had money. Money.
And over 10 years ago, I saw that there was a terrible...
As far as I know, you're a good guy.
America directly and fight for them every single day.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Congressman O'Rourke?
I've always tried to bring people in to the solutions that we have to our common challenges, regardless of the differences. I did that as a small business owner more than 20 years ago, making sure that we could get a small tech company off the ground in El Paso, Texas. Did it as a member of the city council, where I saw my colleagues not as Republicans or Democrats, but my fellow El Pasoans who had a responsibility to deliver for our community. As a member of Congress, I remember being in San Antonio. I was visiting the VA there March of 2017, found that my flight had been snowed in Washington, D.C. I happened to be in the elevator with a Republican member of Congress, Will Hurd, and on a whim I said, do you want to just rent a car and drive from San Antonio to Washington?
It's on
And he called
pause.
my bluff. We got in that Chevy Impala, last car on the lot. It was spring break. Drove 1,600
Paused
miles across the country, live streamed the conversation, a Republican and a Democrat, finding out what we had in common. By the end of that trip, not only had we formed a friendship, but we had formed trust. We worked with each other on each other's bills. I got Will to work with me on an immigration bill, showing party leaders from either side that Republicans and Democrats could work together on an otherwise contentious issue. And then across Texas, I mentioned winning more votes than any Democrat. We won independents and Republicans in record numbers as well. I will bring people in and together to face the common challenges that we have.
Let me just adjust the rabbit ears here.
Passed legislation together to help homeless and foster kids. I went out to try to invite every one of my Republican colleagues to dinner. And let me again say, finding a dinner at a restaurant agreeing on one with Ted Cruz was a very difficult thing. I'm a vegan and he's a meat-eating Texan. But I'll tell you this right now. This is the moment in America that this is our test. The spirit of our country, I believe in the values of rugged individualism and self-reliance. But think about our history. Rugged individualism didn't get us to the moon. It didn't beat the Nazis. It didn't map the human genome. It didn't beat Jim Crow. Everything we did in this country, big. And Vice President, we have done so many big things. The fact that there's an openly gay man, a black woman, all of us on this stage are because we in the past are all inheritors of a legacy of common struggle and common purpose. This election is not a referendum on one guy in one office. It's a referendum on who we are and who we must be to each other. The next leader is going to have to be one amongst us Democrats that can unite us all, not throw elbows at other Democrats that are unfair, because the preparation is being the leader that can revive civic grace in our country, teach us a more courageous empathy, and remind America that patriotism is love of country.
It's gotta be true. It's gotta be you. I'm not endorsing Booker. I think he's great. Followed him for a long time. I think he definitely has a place. He could be president, but he could also be president another time. Ugh. Let's see if we can get... There it is. There it is. There. It's on pause. It's paused again. Pod again. What's going on? It seems to be CNN streaming.